Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of SubQuery's Investor Series. My name is James Bailey. I'm the Head of Business Development at SubQuery. And today I'm joined by a good friend, Oleg Ivanov from Berezka DAO is joining me from all the way from Tel Aviv. Oleg, it's a pleasure to have you here today and talking to us. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so if you could give us a quick introduction about your DAO and what you guys do and yeah, just run it from the top.
Right. So literally we have two divisions within Berezka. It's the ventures and the DAO. So ventures is actually doing early stage investments in pretty much various blockchain industry sort of infrastructure projects since early 2017, I would say. And yeah, we've done probably 70 something deals early stage, and we're quite happy and lucky to join you guys as well. And the DAO part, Berezka DAO part, is basically about asset management in DeFi space. So we are one of the probably largest or at least known liquidity providers in the Russian speaking part of the world to different, DeFi protocols like your Avis, Compound, and, DEXs and whatnot.
So you guys have been around 2017, did I hear you say right? That's
Yep.
a long time in crypto. That's like decades in crypto.
Very true.
I imagine you've been through a lot since then, right? You've been through the big bull run of 2018, where we thought would reach a massive peak, and you're going through, or you're still going through the current super cycle. I guess over that, that long-term view that you have, what are some things that you've learned over those years that I guess new people might not have?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's learnings and learnings, right? And you just some of the things when you pick out from the situations as learnings, they might eventually become wrong as well. So first of all, it's good to understand that whatever we're experiencing right now in the blockchain space is pretty much similar to whatever that was happening in the dot-com times and the other cycles. And we're definitely going through ups and downs, and there's going to be more that are coming over, but definitely before we reach the what they call the early majority stage, or whatever the name is correct here, it's the road is going to be bumpy, and we're not there yet, of course. But on the other hand, of course, this is probably one of the most exciting times right now for us, because you see how the industry evolves. You see things that didn't exist, they appear and become pretty much like the leaders in the space and the industry standard, just really like in a matter of months, right? I mean, the part that you see as the user, maybe, or the market observer, of course, as you tend to work years and years with that, right? To actually build something. But yeah, really, you do have that feeling that being part of this movement, you really have a chance to, well, make a little bit of an influence into the infrastructure that is going to be used by pretty much everybody in the future, including us and our kids, I guess, and so on. So it's really exciting.
No, I completely understand that, and that's something I say a lot to people as well. Is that like blockchain right now? It does feel like '95 in the .com cycle, right?
Sure, sure.
Or in that early .com era, where yes, there was a lot of hype. Imagine if people had said back then, like, this internet thing, this .com stuff is all rubbish and it's not going anywhere, right? And
True.
looking back 20 years in the future now, you're like, that how wrong you would be. So even though at the moment, we're still finding our feet, we're still figuring out what works, there's a huge potential ahead of us.
Yeah, sorry. I remember the times when you would have business meetings back in like late 90s, talking to some traditional business people, and they would just, I mean, you would ask a question, do you have a website, or like emails they tend to have already. But yeah, they would have business cards with fax machines there, but no website, and probably no even, an email and all. And they would just be like, hey, we're not an online business. Why would we want that? So, but something that we wouldn't even think right now of, right? Because I mean, actually now websites is a bit of a thing of a past, maybe, because you really have to be present in social media and
it's a
in chat
baseline,
groups
right?
and things like yeah, exactly. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, it is tricky. And one thing you mentioned that, like, look, you guys are pretty heavy into DeFi, right? Is that you kind of, do you think that's the first step of this transition to Web3, or to the new way, or like, where do you think DeFi what role do you think DeFi plays in this?
See, it's a tough one, right? Because the honest answer is you never know, right? And of course,
You're only
what you
guessing.
having, yeah. But what happens, of course, is if you just walk through some logical steps of how blockchain was developing, you tend to stick to some business cases that were sort of applied and then used on a mass scale, and that was always giving sort of a boost, to the whole industry. So, you might speculate and say that Bitcoin was pretty much about the business of remittances, right? So basically, that would be your alternative to your, I don't know, Western Union, some MoneyGram, whatever else, right? So all the international transfers, same concept, just a different business model in a way, right? So that's why it took off and blah blah. Then when Vitalik came with Ethereum with an idea of EVM and smart contracts, then of course it blew everybody's minds, and people tried to apply it to many different areas. But one thing that really took off is basically the idea of crowdfunding through ICOs, right? So that's just the tiny business of crowdfunding that pretty much got the application and the use case. And everybody was trying to sort of build other versions of blockchain protocols, and some other projects, maybe even trying to apply it to traditional businesses. So that wave also brought us to another level where we have now different tiers or different layers of blockchain protocols and some other infrastructure solutions like wallets, like delegators, stakers, exchanges, and so on. And then eventually on the money side, if you look at all the players in the field, you realize that okay, once you get on board of this blockchain industry, you tend to have some assets, right? I mean, because you do buy
Once
tokens, you do hold.
you're in.
Exactly, yeah. So you do hold some tokens, but then most people would still feel sort of uncomfortable in understanding that all the assets are like super volatile, right? I mean, in the morning you could gain some great percentage points, by the end of the day
Some
you
people
may be
love
broke.
that, right? Some people are attracted
Well,
by
yeah,
that.
but not
Yeah.
probably the majority, right? So it doesn't
Right.
fit for the majority. So that's why when the stable coins idea, right, came in with the Tether and then later on some other ones, of course, that was a great, I wouldn't say it's like, it's a technical innovation, but it was a very good business innovation for people to realize that, hey, you can actually stay within blockchain and remove volatility there and peg your assets to US dollars, right? So now you could actually have business transactions in crypto, but then without the volatility. And if you actually have a look at the daily volumes right now on all the crypto assets, we understand. I mean, we all see very clearly that the stable coins by far actually take the largest pie of all the volumes. I mean, not even Bitcoin and Ethereum are actually even close to that. I mean, it's just it's way up. So then, of course, I mean, if you go just step by step, so you realize that blockchain gives you a chance to hold some of your money or some of your assets outside of the banking system, and you hold the keys to your wallets, right? So this is your money, nobody can take it. Then you remove volatility with stable coins, and then the next step, of course, would be like, okay, if we have some traditional, even primitive banking products like deposits or lending or something else, why don't you recreate the same story in here, right? So that's why looking into whatever actually was happening already in centralized exchanges, your Binances, Coinbase, and the like, you had all those services, right? You have services for exchanging one currency to another, lending, deposits, it all existed. So what happened eventually is that, of course, part of this business actually moved to smart contracts and created the DeFi space, right? And part of the business is being eaten out from the centralized exchanges to DeFi. We all didn't, I guess, we didn't realize how large this piece of the business was, right? Because it was all within the centralized exchanges, which is fine. I mean, part of the business anyway, it has to be there, but it's just like it wasn't visible in terms of like the volumes, the
But now
commissions,
it's
and all.
absolutely transparent.
Very true, yeah, and it's still like in a very very premature stage, right? Because there's just such a long way to go in terms of the amount of users, the total value locked, and so on. So yeah, it all started with your traditional, let's say, primitive banking, and of course now building more and more on top of that with more complex products, with derivatives, with hedging, and things like that. So yeah.
So it's okay to characterize your view of DeFi as the logical first step of entry into blockchain, right? We're taking this model that we know works on a kind of computerized system, has some very clearly defined rules, and we're taking that immediately to a place where we can put it to smart contracts. We can execute that independently and trustlessly, and it all will work. And it makes sense, right? DeFi is huge, and really the big thing, next thing is on ramps and off ramps, right? That's the biggest barrier to entry at the moment with the average person is getting money into the crypto world and out of the crypto. That's the biggest challenge.
Well, there's quite a few bottlenecks. I mean, I'm sure you well know, and especially with SubQuery, you guys are tackling quite a few of those as well, which are not easy, to build. And it's great that you have such a fantastic team that is actually approaching it. But yeah, things like off ramp and on and off ramp from traditional money to crypto and backwards, you just cannot. It does involve the area of legal regulation, and it cannot be paramount. It cannot be like multinational or whatnot, right? So it has to be done regionally, and that's one thing. Second, of course, is the problem that we see every time when we hear some initiatives from the administrative bodies in this or that country, is that most of the rulings that are coming out, they're trying to unite the cryptocurrency as sort of one type of asset. Yeah.
When there's multiple.
Exactly. And we all realize that they're all different. It's like, comparing what they're trying to do right now, if you compare it with the traditional world, and just imagine that they would like to, it's like as if they are trying to pass one bill on stocks, on fiat money, on loyalty points, on your airlines, on, I don't know.
It's a sledgehammer approach to something that requires a very fine, chisel sometimes. Yeah.
And it's just, so it's like you cannot rule, you cannot rule them because there's stable coins, there's traditional sort of utility tokens, there's loyalty points, there's NFTs, there's like, DeFi assets and stuff. So they're all very different. So that's why, of course, whatever they want to do, it has to be differentiated. And it's just,
And like DeFi, at SubQuery, we've been doing a lot of work with DeFi providers, right? We've announced we're going for Carla, who are trying to create a DeFi hub on Polkadot. We've found there's a lot of DeFi players coming to use us and use us for our data so they can provide DeFi. Obviously there's a lot of rewards being made, and there's a lot of ways you can rewards off many DeFi products out there right now.
Sure.
But I think one of the biggest issues that we're seeing at SubQuery is that providing a user interface into these different products and the different methods to interact with them, it's still challenging, right? It's a very technical and very jargon-filled world where you're looking at BIPs and certain kind of pooling of liquidity and all these different terms that the average person doesn't know. And one thing at SubQuery that we're really working closely with is not just DeFi players building these DeFi apps, but also actually individuals that are building bots to trade on those DeFi players. They want to index data, which all this data again is public. It's just not ordered. There's no sense out of it. And they just want to index that to provide them an edge in terms of the information that they have to therefore go back and trade on those DeFi products. So it's a very interesting marketplace here right now.
No,
and
it's very true.
It's fascinating seeing how, like, when you completely make essentially our banking industry or our financial products industry transparent, what humanity's collective imagination can come up with.
I totally agree with you, and this is really funny because when we started in 2019, digging DeFi and actually building something around it, we didn't do anything on Polkadot and Alcala. I mean, and all the other infrastructure that is now built on Polkadot. But this is I'm very bullish on that, of course, and having Gallingwood, and all the team that is building these things. I can only imagine what will happen once more and more once more and more applications would go live there. So, of course, as you see, the infrastructure goes into different sort of segments, geographically, maybe industry-wise, and so on. And of course, the second bottleneck that we've discussed, fiat on ramp and off ramp, the ramp being the first one, is of course bridging, all this infrastructure between each other. But then, of course, even within each individual sort of pool, let's say, or community, or community of projects, even there's so many tools that have to be built, and the things that you guys again are putting together even for your traditional day-to-day business are very scarce at the moment. Let me give you an example, right? So let's say you're an asset manager like Berezka DAO, right? So basically what you do is you have assets from your LPs, your investors or whatnot, right? And then you sort of allocate these assets to different DeFi protocols, lending, DEXs, and so on. The business model is very simple, and you just say, okay, whatever comes on top, we just share the success fees and blah blah blah. But the problem is when you go down into details, because what happens is that you don't have historical data of your transactions on blockchain. So, which means that every time there's like an investor coming and going, or you sort of enter or exit some liquidity pool, that means that you have to record this data to know exactly the prices, the time, and who, which amount of assets actually got in and out, to make sure that you account for it, so that these investors would then generate so much return, these not, or then success fees and so on. And the funniest part is that if you look into the industry, everybody, what they do is they take on-chain data, they download it on spreadsheets, like physically, manually, right?
Yeah, no, I've done it myself.
See, so then you do like all the manual calculations, and if you have some dashboards for your clients, you just then pull out the Excel data and pull it back online. So you go, this is nuts, right? This is not DeFi, it's not decentralized.
And
So
especially when you're talking about blockchain data, where the volume of data means it doesn't actually work in Excel anymore.
very true,
It's too much.
very true, very true. And
Trust me,
then
I've worked in corporate where I know that in many cases in corporate, generally a system is run on Excel. Like there's kind of
there you go,
a
there you
rule
go.
that if you don't know where it is, it's on Excel or on a
Exactly.
spreadsheet somewhere.
But that's what we're trying to do in the industry, right? We want to eliminate all these sort of bottlenecks and, of course, manual labor and the potential risks of some of some funny things with data, right? And especially
Yeah.
with data that's related to assets. So that's why when you see it in all this and you understand that everything that happens there eventually just ends up in Excel and some lady in the accounting room, you go, come on. And then
Right.
just to
It can be good and
finalize this.
bad.
Exactly, yeah, and then to finalize the problem with that is that that's one of the reasons why most DeFi protocols cannot automate their activity, because they don't have the correct historical price data, at least. So that means that if they don't have this price data, they don't have correct on-chain calculation of NAV, token prices, success fees and stuff, which means that they cannot automate deposits and withdrawals, because they there's a risk for exploit, for the exploits and all. So of course, things that I've studied some of your, of course, the milestones and all, and this is one of the reasons why we were just so hyped about you guys, that part of the infrastructure that you're trying to build specifically on Polkadot right now is just it's really needed. And yeah,
this is one of the best. This is a key reason why I love talking to our customers, our investors, our partners, and we do a lot. We always make sure that on a regular occurrence, we're reaching out to customers or participants in the ecosystem and talking to them, because every time you hear this brand new idea, I would never have thought that like a product that you need for your DAO to figure out exactly the returns for individual investors is that is a solution that you need. There's a problem there that you have, and there's a solution that SubQuery can solve, right? It all just comes down to taking this on-chain data, which is the best part about being a blockchain, is it's generally all on-chain. It's all recorded, it's all
very
transparent.
true.
And so the need for these tools like SubQuery to organize that information, provide it in a way that can be used through applications or to solve your particular problem is relevant. And every time I talk to customers, to investors, to partners, I always hear brand new things. And our biggest challenge is just finding people to build these things, right?
That's very true. There's a long road there, but you have quite a lot of work, I guess, for the coming few years. That's for sure.
But we just build the tool, right? Like how you build the tool,
True.
how you apply the tool is up to you, is up to customers, and that's one of the best things about working at SubQuery. Is every day you go online, you see what are the new projects today, and you find this random project that does some really cool thing. You're like, wow, that was new. That was interesting.
Yeah,
and one of the big reasons why we need to set up an incubator or grants program, actually. I'm curious to know, so you're big into that kind of the Russian ecosystem. And one of the biggest areas of our community is the biggest proportion of our community probably is from Russia, actually. We have a huge following in Russia and Ukraine. I'm curious to know why is crypto and maybe SubQuery specifically, but I believe it's more to crypto. Why is it so big in Russia?
Yeah,
or in those sides of
it's
the
one
world?
of those questions that is very difficult to answer, I guess. Yeah, you do have to face it that yeah, Russia is quite significant in terms of the user base and actually the founders of different projects, right? Where
Mm.
that are coming from this, let's say Russian speaking countries, right? Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and the other ones as well. And I guess it's just a combination of let's say the background knowledge and the schools that are still sort of doing good job for educating people there as one thing, and second of course is I would probably say something not very popular, but the business and political environment that we all live in at the moment, most of us, let's say, in this part of the world, they're all quite aggressive, and they have
Mm.
been aggressive for the past few decades, I would say, with perestroika, because it was just the dynamic time when everybody was building businesses, and now there's another part of it where you have just some, let's say, some other issues, right, that just do not allow you to work there. And so that really trains you to be innovative, right, to try to create something that literally pushes you to come up with ideas how to survive in a way, right? And then with the back knowledge that you have, and with such competition within this community, you end up having quite interesting projects and bright ideas, and the guys who are actually trying to do things, right? So also, if you look at the amount of cryptocurrency, so there's the projects, right, and the user base. Now then there's usage. So if you look at the amount of crypto transactions that is being used in the parts of the world where you have quite aggressive governments,
Hmm.
and just the whole environment, you would see that the volume of transaction in crypto is much higher. Again, it's just
Yeah.
pushing people to do day-to-day business, to not to try to hide from taxes or something. It's just a matter of protecting yourself from anything that could happen with you, because somebody else can play the system, and you
To be
just
on a
don't
more
trust
even
the
playing
system.
field, I guess, really,
Exactly.
as it comes
Yeah.
down to, right?
Very
And
true. Yeah.
that's true in many regions around the world, right? There's many countries where that is pretty pertinent. Yeah, but regardless, it's great. The Russian people, and we've noticed like community, the Russians are really outspoken. They get stuck in. They build some really amazing things. It's kind of a perfect mix, and you might see Russians pull ahead and kind of leading the crypto fight and taking Crypto Valley from Switzerland one day, maybe.
Probably not geographically, but let's say by the number of people and the founders and the funds, probably. I don't think there's a race for the winner there. It's really, you know how it happens in the industry, right? So everybody is
Mm.
just really trying to support each other. Okay, there is competition, of course, but then there's more collaboration, which that's what I enjoy, in this space, because there's just the area is so vast, and
Yeah,
there's so many things that you have to do. It's just like there's no time for competition. You have to build, and it's like the times for the settlers in America, right? When you land, and it's just like there's plain land,
it's
and that's it,
rush.
right? You just
Yeah,
exactly, yeah, just
you got to
go and
put
do your job. That's it. Yeah,
and but like you can't also forget though of partners, I think, in this ecosystem, and that's one thing about Polkadot. I think blockchain in general, COVID has affected a lot of other industries, but for us,
very true.
we still work very much remotely. I think most blockchain teams I talk to on a day-to-day basis, I'd say half of them are fully remote
Yeah,
because they're looking
very
for the
true.
right people, and it doesn't really matter where they're working in the world, what they're doing, whether they're on a beach in the Bahamas, or they're in the middle of New York, or they're in somewhere in Siberia. It doesn't really matter as long as they've got a good
Very true.
laptop
Yeah.
and a good internet connection. And really, it's all about what's up here. One thing that we've really enjoyed at SubQuery, I guess, working, because we're based in New Zealand, which is very much in a corner of the world, is working mostly with teams around the world, and creating good partnerships with teams around the world, partnerships that mean a lot. Do you guys, what's your view on kind of how partnerships should be formed in this ecosystem, and how things are happening at the
It's just, I guess, it's very difficult to put a strategy behind it, in my opinion. So it's just, especially in the field of startups, I guess it's more. You sort of get this picture of, you walk into the doors that are opening in front of you, and then there's other doors, and then there's other doors, and then you just that's it. And then along the way, you probably stop somewhere and think, okay, what is the end result that I want to try to achieve? So which should I turn left or right for that?
Mm.
And then you make that decision, and then you know go work again. So it's one of those things that you don't spend a lot of time on strategy. You do it. You still, you still have to, have priorities in terms of where you're going, right? But you spend much more time on actually building things and just working and just going one after another after another. And yeah, exactly like you said, when you initiate, talks both online and offline, you tend to bump into people and ideas, right? And then which lead you to introductions to some, other people and ideas, and that, and then some partnerships are created out of that. Some don't. I guess that would be my view. So not very organized, but I guess a little bit practical, probably. I don't know.
Oleg, you seem to be, to me, like the kind of guy that has his ear pretty close to the ground, listening what's happening in the ecosystem, what's happening out there in the blockchain world in general. How do you look for and identify a good team or from a bad team, right? Or how do you kind of what tactics do you internally use to identify who's worth talking to versus who's not?
If you're talking about the venture business, right? So if there's a little bit of let's say a little of not a strategy. I don't know, maybe a sort of a
So
procedure
are
that
you
we
more
go through.
looking for teams that fit within your strategy more rather than kind of being opportunistic and looking for any team that looks really good?
I would say it goes through a certain, let's say, process in a way. So basically, because we're talking, we're sort of going around the industry in conferences and trying to see, what's happening in the industry, where, the next turn is, and so on. You do sort of realize trends, and because you're sort of involved in the industry as well, especially with DeFi, for us, for example, you understand the bottlenecks of each individual industry that you dive, say, like, we don't understand anything about mining, right, or trading. Like, this is not our core. So I'm sure there's tons of things to be built there, but DeFi, this is our, one of our core businesses. So you do realize the bottlenecks there, and within these bottlenecks, you try to search some concepts of how these bottlenecks can be solved in a way, right? So what solutions can actually fit in here, and there could be a range of approaches for each individual bottleneck. So then you try to search projects that are trying to address this bottleneck by using this or that, and then you pretty much have to listen or read whatever the guys are claiming, just to sort of sense by yourself whether it actually makes any sense, in terms of what the guys are trying to do and all. And then, of course, if there's a call, then we just talk, right? And we talk not about just generics, but actually just specifics, like, because we dive deep into things, you just say, hey, what do you think about that, and how do you want to approach that, and yeah, so it's just every time when you have a discussion and like specific discussion, things become pretty clear. If the team is actually like really grinding difficult things and doing stuff, or it's just another, people with a deck and who's trying to raise some extra thing for the
There's
Lambo
plenty
stuff.
of people out there with a deck and a white paper.
Very, very true. Yeah, which is fine, I guess. This is part of the job, right? Whenever you have a booming industry, you end up having teams and people like that. And I mean, there's also a range of those, right? Because there's like hardcore scammers, let's say, and then there's some dreamers that just, they want to, like Don Quixotes, right? So they want to sort of win this war, but they just don't realize they don't have the capacity for it or the ammunition for it, and also they're fair, I mean, and they're open, and they're really trying, but it's just that the chances of not getting there are much higher for them, unfortunately.
In my view, the trick is to find the right combination of dreamers and executioners
Very true.
in the
Very
same
true.
team. You
And
need the
it's always
people
the
that
team.
can.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. So it's always the team. I mean, one man show, it's very difficult. It's very hard to find right now. Yeah, that's very true.
You never have enough time in the world. I guess if someone manages to find out how to live life without sleeping, please let me know. I'd love to get that
I
information.
don't know if that's a good idea, but anyways.
No. So Oleg, can you walk us through your investment thesis around SubQuery? What attracted you us at the start? How'd you find out about us? Firstly, maybe.
Well, yeah, finding projects is not easy, right? Especially in the early stage, and especially with such bright teams as you guys are, and of course that mostly comes from sort of word of mouth within just the network of other funds and investors that that we deal with, right, since 2017. So we do share deals, we do share our sort of opinions about it and also that, of course, I mean, you guys came from one of those channels saying that, hey, you definitely need to have a look at them. And so, yeah, of course, the like I said, being so deeply involved in DeFi and understanding that this industry is moving cross-chain to other protocols and ecosystems, and seeing all the limitations right now on the current large business chunks in DeFi, which is Ethereum and BSC now and Polygon, you do see the limitations within these chains, not only just in transaction and the speed and gas fees, but also in the infrastructure, like at least one of the elements that I was just saying. And you end up pretty much making a decision to yourself whether you build some stuff for your internal use or you support projects that are trying to maybe partially within their set of tasks within like milestones, one of them being trying to at least build some portion of this potential ecosystem or tools for the ecosystem that you might be using as a client. And of course, like the example that I just mentioned, as just a tiny one, of course, was very, very. I mean, it is very painful and very expensive for us at the moment, but just for us, for everybody to understand that. Of course, it's great to see that you guys are tackling, some of the things that is being built by Graph, for example, in Ethereum and now in BNC and then some other elements.
There's nothing like knowing there's a problem when you actually experience it yourself, and you have the personal kind of understanding of that problem and how it could be solved. And I do very much share your grand vision of where DeFi could be and the blockchain sphere in general could be in 10 years time. Just like, like we're having this conversation in 1997 in the dot-com boom, talking about what it could be in 2010 or 2020. And, I think it keeps coming back to this, which is, fundamental to all of that vision, to that future that we dream of, where anyone can come into the ecosystem, deposit their money, transact around the world, send money to their family in different countries at a fraction of the price and lightning quick. For that entire world to be there, we need the applications that are easy enough to use by anyone. And for those applications to exist, we need those fundamental infrastructure tooling, those pieces of infrastructure that we need to build to power them, right? And that's what SubQuery is all about, right? It's the foundational infrastructure for the future.
Exactly.
Yeah. Last question, I guess. Is there any parting advice that you would like to give a future entrepreneur or someone that's thinking about jumping into the blockchain ecosystem? Is there any advice you'd like to give someone about how they should go about this? Yeah, that's an expected question, but a very tough one as well, because I guess the only simple example would be the only advice would be not to think twice and just do it now. Just really start reading at least something, subscribe to some channels in Telegram and Twitter, you guys as well, because you're publishing really interesting material as well. And I know there's a pipeline of those coming out as well. And yeah, just start reading at least. And in terms of the actions, the easiest way to actually make first steps in crypto is just get an account on Coinbase or Binance or, Huobi or whatnot, and get at least a fraction of Bitcoin and Ethereum, because you will not, there's no chance you can lose on that one. So don't spend dozens and dozens or thousands of dollars. Don't mortgage your house. Don't take your. No. Just don't do that. Just spend $100 to get a fraction of Bitcoin and Ethereum, just to see, just get the feeling about this, and then you would have not just the theoretical expertise, but of course you would do some things in practice already. And it's like one of those things, right? You cannot ride a bicycle. You cannot learn to ride a bicycle by the book, right? You cannot learn how to swim by the book. You have to jump in the water, or you have to really do some rides on the bike. And then you would, in the first case, you would definitely have some water in your lungs and your nose and whatnot, right? And but then eventually you learn, right? Like everybody of us. And same goes with the bicycle. So same here. So it looks very unfamiliar and scary and sort of maybe scamish in a way because of the price volatility of Bitcoin. But crypto is not Bitcoin. Blockchain is not Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a big chunk of it, but it's definitely just for our understanding, right? We manage tens of millions of dollars across different sort of projects and DeFi as well and not. I probably have 1.5 Bitcoin. All the rest is all in other coins, most of it in stables and some other projects. So
just again, just for us to understand, there's just so much more there about the whole industry, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The best way to learn something is to just do it. Do it once, do it twice, make some mistakes, screw up, get it wrong. But through that process, you learn how you got it wrong. You figure out why you got it wrong. You figure out why that didn't work. And you learn so much better than any other book or YouTube video or website or even class would teach you. And that's one of the things about blockchain, right? It's so new that everything that we're doing, right, there is no book for this. There is no
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
there's no Stack
And they
Overflow
just
for how to do a blockchain
yeah,
company.
the data and all the information gets outdated so quickly, and that's the beauty of it, right? So you don't have the mastodons, the guys who would be like the gurus of the industry, that you come up to them and say, hey, what do you think and stuff. There's just not, because there's not a single person who would visualize the whole industry and build projections for this or not. It's the industry changes, and it refreshes every like quarter, literally, right? Every 3-4
Yeah.
months. So for you to jump in and start learning something, it's always, you're not lagging behind. You're not. You can catch up very, very quickly, like few months time, and you're top notch. So
Exactly right. Well, Oleg, it was an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Very much enjoyed it. And thank you very much for joining us today.
sure, thanks, and good luck, guys.
Cheers, Oleg.